Some pass and some don't, but the lingering effects of them on our souls last forever. So without further ado, one written by Manon_Lysette 8 years ago, I wasn't alone seeking shelter from the blizzard. Where I am from in northern Alaska, deep in the woods, the forest, the tundra, where very few survive, let alone thrive and live. There is an unspoken rule up in these mountains. No matter who you are, friend, foe, bitter rival, stranger, anyone, if you are ever in a pinch and come across another hunter's cabin, you're welcome to seek shelter there. Maybe it's unspoken because it's common courtesy, common sense, and that whole do unto others thing. Or maybe it's unspoken because there's hardly anyone to speak to. In the winter months especially, you'd be hard-pressed to see another soul for weeks, sometimes months at a time. There is just very few of us remaining during the deepest part of winter. But that is the rule. You need it, you use it, no judgment, no questions asked, just don't steal anything. Now, let me tell you a little something about myself. I'm not a burly, seasoned mountain man that flosses with tree bark and never shaves, but I do like to hunt. I often leave my small Alaskan village for weeks at a time and take to my hunting lodge up in the mountains. I'm a fairly cautious guy, and I know the mountains can be treacherous. So when I leave prepared. I check always believed my precautions, my hesitant nature, my pessimistic side would keep me protected in any situation. But like a child's security blanket, they're paper thin, illusions of safety. There's no planning when Mother Nature decides to unleash her fury. That's why I honestly never expected to get caught in a blizzard on that day. See, it started out sunny and cold, as expected, but as the day progressed, you see, a few clouds formed, but by the time I had almost reached my cabin, they had amassed into dark, foreboding clouds. Heavy, heavy, deep, snow-filled clouds. I mean, if I could tell you I was almost back to my cabin, maybe would have said 10 minutes at most. I had a couple of hairs hanging over my shoulders. For those of you that don't know what a hare is, it is a large rabbit. I'd even named them dinner and breakfast. I was actually going to eat, breakfast for dinner and dinner for breakfast, if only to make myself laugh. It's truly the little things that keep the solitude from turning into loneliness. The snowfall seemed to come out of nowhere. You know, like someone had knocked an awning shut and all the snow collected on top and fallen all at once. Except it wasn't a single tidal wave of snow. It was relentless, unending assault. Last I checked, the weather reports had not mentioned a blizzard. And yet, a blizzard was what I found myself walking through at that very moment. The skies got dark very fast. I kicked myself for leaving my flashlight back at my lodge. I planned on coming home way before nightfall, so I had not thought I would have even needed it. But here's where mistakes happen, and they can be fatal. And in this case, I was sorely mistaken. Snow prickled painfully as ice crystals darted into my eyes. My eyes were squinted almost all the way shut to keep these sub-zero shards of pain from stabbing me blind. The wind howled as I pushed against the gales that cut through my clothes and deep into my bones. I could barely see 2 feet in front of me, and I couldn't see the 2 feet beneath me as they sank in an ever-growing blanket of white. mentioned before, if you would have asked me back then, I was maybe 10 minutes at the most from my cabin. This is not my first hunting. Brigade. It was not my first time in the snow. I don't know what happened that day. I'm not sure when I was lost or when I realized it. At some point I knew I should have arrived at my cabin by then, but all I saw was white with a few slivers of gray swaying in the thick, relentless breeze. The hairs at the back of my neck became stiff and battered against me with every puff of air and every awkward crashing footfall. I was running out of energy, running out of ideas, and running out of time. I began to panic. I could have spun around in a computer chair 100 times and felt less disoriented than I did in that whiteout. And that's when it happened. I walked right into a cabin, literally. The darkness had become so deep, the snow so heavy and wet and foreboding. I couldn't see the structure until I literally stumbled face first into it. Reaching out my hands against the wooden facade, I felt my way gingerly along the building so I would not lose it in the storm. I circled around and around until I found a door. See, I wasn't just in a pinch. This was life or death. In the unlikely event someone was inside, out of courtesy, I gave a knock on the door and said, "Hello, anybody home?" And then I waited for an answer. Through the howling wind, I could have sworn I heard, "Come in." As I swung open the door and stepped inside, this small avalanche of snow tumbled in with me. I didn't even bother to kick it out as I fought against the prevailing wind to just get the door closed as quickly as I could. The relief was instantaneous. Without the air whipping at me, I'd put a stop to the timing ticking that was making its way to the end of my life's clock, as I would have frozen to death. "Thanks," I whispered. "Thanks." I turned towards the inside of the cabin and tried to get some sort of bearing, but all I saw was blackness, which focused on trying to find a doorknob. Honestly, I had no idea how big this cabin was. No idea the length, no idea the width, nothing. I could have walked half of it or circled 3 times around it without realizing it through the darkness. I could barely see anything. It was a vague outline of someone sitting in the corner of the room. "You're a real lifesaver," I said. He didn't answer that. I pawed around for a lighter, a lantern, a matchbox, a matchbook, a match, flint, anything that might admit light, but all my fingers touched were chains and the barrels of hunting rifles. I stopped poking around when I felt an open bear trap. I wouldn't want to get my arm caught in one of those. It was safer just to sit still until the day broke over the horizon. It was safer to sit still and wait for the day to break over the horizon. It occurred to me that the stranger might have been seeking refuge as well. So I started, keeping my tone light and innocent, fairly cheerful. "You the cabin owner?" The answer was more of a hiss than a word. But in that hiss I heard a faint yes. I sat on the floor, let my hairs down beside me, and reached into my bag. Why I had taken a sleeping bag with me and not a flashlight was beyond my comprehension. But it was what it was at that point. I removed my wet clothes and quietly slipped into the sleeping bag to warm my body. Making conversation as I did. "Thanks again, that blizzard really came out of nowhere." This time he replied with a labored, wheezy breath of an elderly man on his deathbed. "Dangerous." Yeah, I chuckled. That's an understatement. Hungry, exhaled. "Okay, you got a fireplace? I got a couple of hairs. I'll cook them up. It's the least I can do," I offered. His reply was drawn out like a wolf howling, but without the majestic hum. "No," he said. "Okay, as soon as the blizzard dies down, I'll go gather wood and make us a fire. Do you think you can wait until then?" That's when I saw his silhouette shift slightly, and I heard distinct rattling of chains. "No." Again the O stretched out in a long bloated groan. much even when they do come to town for a few supplies that they can't actually make themselves. I shrugged it off and settled in for the night. But I felt something hard against my side. Sighing, I tossed my hairs back a bit farther and got comfortable. I was exhausted, so it wasn't all that hard for me to drift off despite the wind's raging song playing outside, hammering against the walls. I hugged myself in my sleeping bag and drifted off to sleep. I was awoken by a different sound, a weird snapping crunch that made me shoot up in my sleeping bag. Believing the ceiling was about to collapse under the weight of the snow, I braced myself for my imminent death. But as the sound came again, I realized it wasn't above me, but rather it was next to me. Near my belongings, it was the silhouette. The silhouette had moved from the corner, and I could hear his deep, raspy breaths accompanying the crunch. I shouted, "What the hell are you doing?" He retreated back to his corner with a rattling of chains. Immediately, I felt adrenaline rush through my veins, and I wasn't sure why. Something about the stranger put me in a state of near panic. My instincts were telling me to get the hell out of there, but I couldn't afford it. I would die if I left at that moment. Whatever this guy was up to, I was safer with him than I was out there in that damn blizzard. I grabbed my backpack and propped myself against the wall in a seated position, staring at his silhouette, expecting him to make a move, something, a twitch, a breath, nothing. I just chose to keep myself awake and alert, never looking away, even as the howling wind slowly diminished in strength. Once or twice I felt my head begin to dip and my eyes begin to shut. But every time I did this, I could hear the faint rattle of chains, which snapped me back into consciousness. As the blizzard cleared and the sun slowly rose, light began to trickle into the cabin. Trickle, trickle, trickle into the cabin. The scene filtered through in tiny increments. Tiny increments. The funny thing was, it was like each layer was revealed as the sun rose in the sky, as if a printer slowly was spitting out the full picture that's even the right word. He wasn't wrapped up in bandages like a mummy or anything like that, but his skin was completely dehydrated, stiff like an unwrapped mummy. His hair was hanging from his head in an unkept array of strings. His teeth were poking out of his shrunken lips with a wide gap where the top right canine should have been, or once had been. There was a stain of age-old blood soaked into the wood beneath him. I followed it by gaze into its origin. His left foot, the bear trap in which it had gotten caught, tightly held what remained. There was an empty hook on the wall above him with a chain leading to the trap. It was long enough for him to move around, but not enough for him to have ever reached the front door or the saw hanging above him, which he could have used if he could have reached it to free himself. My best guess as to what happened as the trap had fallen on its own while he was out, and at some point in time he'd done a supply run in the dark and had gotten caught in his own trap. He'd probably died of thirst, starvation, or he just bled out. The evidence wasn't really clear of exactly how he got in such a situation, seeing as if this were his cabin, he'd know the traps would have been there. But look, I'm not trying to solve this crime or this tale or whatever happened to this man. All I know is I'm telling you, he wasn't breathing. The man that had spoken to me last night, that had moved in the darkness, rattled the chains. He was dead. Dead as a doornail. Dead for years, possibly. And yet had still spoken to me. I'm not crazy. I swear I sat there reasoning that I'd been delirious the night before. The fatigue, the dehydration, the disorientation caused by the blizzard, the cold seeping into my veins and turning them to ice. It made me imagine his voice, is a weird place. Sometimes it believes what it wants, it sees what it wants, and it hears what it wants. At least that's what I told myself. The elements had conspired against me to create a living person out of someone who was definitely not alive. It was a good logical explanation, and I wish I could say that it was true. Except I'm not the one who bit the head off of breakfast. It's not my canine tooth I found on the floor next to me. My dry, dirty wood-like fingernails are not the ones sticking out of the outside of my sleeping bag. I am not the one who caked the corpses dry, cracking lips with white fur. I didn't stick around for dinner. Story number two. Number two. Written almost 2 years ago by you/AB Gain 667. I took shelter from the blizzard. I should have stayed outside. You see, I only wanted warmth. What I found in that basement still haunts me to this day. I wasn't sure I would survive. The storm hit harder than anything I'd ever seen before. It's almost paranormal energy of some sort. It didn't feel like any blizzard I'd ever experienced. I tried to get out my satellite phone, but my fingers could not press the buttons. Every step I took in that blizzard, snow felt like I was walking through wet concrete. My fingers and toes didn't even hurt or itch anymore. They were just numb. I couldn't feel them. I couldn't feel anything. It started to almost feel as if it were getting hot. Now, knowing that once this happens, I would be a dead man. And then, like a beacon, I saw an outline of a house. Honestly, it looked like my savior, and was there out of nowhere. This house. How could I have been so lucky in the middle of nowhere? This home, this warm house was there. I even made it to the front hands, and like an angel, an older woman came out and quickly rushed me in. Her touch was soft and welcoming, and the warmth of the house spread over me like a warm blanket. My whole world was a blur when oh my gosh, she took off my gloves. My fingers had started to turn a deep white, almost dark underneath where the blood had stopped flowing. You almost lost your fingers, the old woman said. She guided me gently to the fireplace, and I could feel the heat emanating, but instead of relief, it felt like knives stabbing into my flesh. My hands and feet were so close to freezing that they reluctantly warmed up enough for the blood to return and flow like normal. There was a man that accompanied this gentle old woman. I felt so lucky to have found this house in the storm. They said to me they had not seen a storm like this in years. They even verbalized my own thoughts by telling me how lucky I was to have found them. I was so close to dying, to giving up. I didn't even realize how close. Their quaint little house, full of warm, loving trinkets and memorabilia and pictures of children over the years, I'm assuming were their own, smelled of meat cooking on the stove. The type of hunger that comes from that type of inhale of cooking food is unreal. Heaven is the closest I can think of. My body shivered with excitement. I couldn't believe I was going to be fed a full meal as well. The old couple was so nice. They were so kind. They let me in. They warmed me up. They gave me clothes. They washed my old ones I was wearing. They let me eat with them as much as I wanted. It's how we age the meat and how we cure it from farm to table as she gently put. They both looked at each other and chuckled a bit. I didn't notice the look between them as being odd or misplaced. It looked like two people that had been given a compliment and knew that the kind of treatment from beginning to end of their food was the best, and that's what made it taste so good. But after the meal, when I regained my true senses, when the veil of disenchantment or enchantment, the veil of enchantment, of illusion lifted just a little bit. I started to glance around the house a little closer. The pictures were oddly placed in the frames as if they were the ones that came with the picture frames when you buy them at the store, still having the sticker on the very front glass. Odd, I thought, and then I looked closer. The house, it wasn't trinkets, it wasn't cozy, it was a mess. Trash and old equipment scattered the floors. In the next room, there were splatters of yellow and dark red liquid on the walls. "Oh, you should stay the night, mister. The storm will rage on. If you don't want to die in that horrible blizzard, I suggest you sleep through the night here," the old man said sternly. The gentleness of his voice was erased and replaced with something more sinister. I should have noticed it then and left. I should have gotten out of there, but I didn't, because my intuition told me I didn't like this place, but my mind was telling me it was better than instant death from what was awaiting outside. They let me sleep on the couch next to the fireplace. The old woman brought me a blanket and then sat next to me. This time her eyes bore into mine. As she spoke, "Are you okay lying on the couch here, sweetie?" she asked. But there it was, the replacement of the kind, welcoming tone with something more dark, something more terrifying. yes, thank you for all of your hospitality, I replied, almost in a childish, peppy, happy, as grateful as I possibly could have been way. I didn't want to aggravate them or make them feel like I was not grateful, because I was. I was extremely grateful that they brought me in and fed me. She then started to rub my back and shoulder, her bony fingers with sharp nail tips at the end felt more uncomfortable than a gentle rub from my grandmother or mother. It turned into squeezing deeper and more aggressive, edging each of my muscles from my shoulder down to my mid-back. I was so uncomfortable at that moment, I instinctively scooted away. She immediately returned that sweet, angelic tone and said, "Oh, you must have walked a long way. You feel so exhausted and your muscles are so dehydrated." "You poor thing," she said. I laughed nervously. Yes, I did. Thank you again for helping me out. That night, I woke up to strange sounds coming from the basement. But that wasn't the weirdest thing. I don't even remember falling asleep after that comment she made. It was like everything just went blank. As these sounds emitted from the basement, I started to listen more closely. The closer I listened, the more I realized these are not normal sounds. This is not a conversation or movement. No. This was internal sense in my body was screaming at me to ignore the sounds, go back to the couch. But I couldn't. I never ignored another human's cries for help, and this cabin was not going to make me act any different. I slowly opened the door to the basement. The room was dark and cold and emitted a musty, dirty, human odor smell that was not pleasant. I started to walk down into the deep, dark basement with each step, feeling the wet, cold creeping against my skin. I was searching the wall for a light switch. My hand ran over something, so I pressed it, illuminating the dungeon. There were 4 mattresses, black, with mold, filthy with cockroaches crawling around, scurrying away from the light. Each mattress had a person lying on it, with one or both hands chained to the wall. Their clothes were rags, unwashed, dried with blood, feces, and urine stained. The mattresses underneath them were just as dirty. I expected the 4 chained individuals to look up at me with some type of relief when they saw it was not their abductors, but their eyes, wide with terror and their mouths duct-taped, looked more terrified than ever that I was there. I couldn't even breathe, looking at these 3 men and 1 woman, each of them missing at least one of their limbs. Most of them had both legs cut off, but 1 man in the very back was missing an arm and both his legs. He was the one screaming the least. His eyes glazed over in a trance. I can imagine having almost all of my limbs cut off me, what I would have felt. I slowly stumbled back up the steps. Nausea had grown in my stomach. My bile had soured, felt heinous and painful as it came up. The smell of the room as I walked down turned to coppery like blood. The smell of feces was overwhelming. This is when I the same grin they had at the dinner table. The meat ran through my mind. Oh my God, the meat. I tried to walk towards the man, but my legs wouldn't move. My fist let go of my knife I was holding a second ago, and darkness took over from the corner of my eyes until I was completely unconscious. I woke up on a mattress with the cockroaches crawling all over my body. I feel their sticky legs walking all over me. I tried to shake them off, but I was so paralyzed, still paralyzed from whatever they gave me. I couldn't get them off. Their tiny legs felt like teeth, and they were eating me bit by bit. I tried to scream, but realized my mouth was duct taped, and all I could make out were the same muffling sounds as the others that were imprisoned down here now with me were making before. Before going down to the basement, I managed to send my location and concerns to one of my friends, an officer a few towns away. I forgot to check if the message even went through. I could hear the old woman humming upstairs. The door opened, a flashlight shone down the steps, and then her sweet, angelic voice trickled through the darkness. Musty, putrid air. How is our new friend settling in? I tried to get out of the chains, but they were tight around my wrists. Her steps slowly approaching me, and the flashlight blinding my eyes. That's when I heard the faint sound of engines. I prayed it wasn't just the storm playing tricks on me. God. A siren echoed in the distance, and then closer and closer it came. I couldn't believe it. I heard footsteps running up the stairs. The basement fell into complete darkness again. They found me before the old couple came down with their tools to start serving me like supper. They found me, all I could repeat. You found me, you got my text, my location. I was in disbelief still. My brain was foggy from the drug she gave me. Just the amount of gratitude looking at my friend as I gave my report. The officers informed me that they only found the woman was somewhere in the deep, dark forests of western Romania, nestled between the mountains and hills, was a place that my ancestors called home. Or so I was told by my mother. My parents always called that place home, despite the fact they barely ever visited, let alone step foot on its soil. I did not realize this then, but I do now, that they were both lost souls, displaced from their homes. Growing up, I always thought that I was ordinary. I mean, don't we all? We're no different than anyone else. We're taught as much by the school system as any other school. My parents told me of a time when the Communist Party was not in power, how things were so different, how much better they were. They never really glamorized it or fantasized it, but just gave it a very strange nostalgia. My mother especially projected this. I still recall the empty stare of my mother looking out into the black sea. At the time, I thought she was worried about my father. See, he was a fisherman. But with my hindsight, as it is always 20/20, I reckon many other things were on her mind that had nothing to do with my father. She worried about me so much that she clung to me, never letting go. My father was really strict, but always gave me the sense that he trusted me to do as I pleased, to grow up normal. He allowed me freedom that my mother kept from me. I would play with the local kids from the village, venturing farther and farther with each passing year. I tried to hide this as to not seem as a rebellious child. I just wanted a little bit more freedom. I didn't want to leave my parents, I just wanted friends. As I tried to hide it, I'd go with my friends to explore the old wrecks of ships, abandoned homes, forests we were told not to enter. Once we found an old rusty Soviet tank trapped in mud. My mother always told me to watch my step. Landmines were never too far. Never touch weapons if you dig out any. Then the Iron Curtain fell, and with it any semblance of stability disappeared. We had little, but when it all collapsed, we had even less. I have fond memories of that time, despite everything it started changing quickly. One by one, the families packed their bags and went to the cities or other countries for refuge. Better jobs, any jobs, opportunities, freedom. With each month, the village became quieter and quieter until it was practically a ghost town. No longer would you hear the children of the town laugh because they were gone. No longer would these streets feel alive. Instead, the air felt stale. One day I was the only one left. I could not understand why my parents never wanted to leave. Everybody else did. I wanted to. I was alone, and I always heard stories of how the cities were magnificent. Opportunity, they were bustling, they were large, many friends to be had. Now I know. Respect was this, a situation that I would ever wish for, but it was better than being in the middle of a ghost town alone. My parents tried their best to keep me preoccupied. My father gave me work to do. My mother would tell me these stories. She was a very well-spoken woman, and I loved listening to the cadence of her voice. All the friends I had, their names, their faces, faded with the wind. All of them but one. I met her on top of a hill that looked out into the vast sea beyond. On top of that hill was a tree and two swings. It was like they were made for just the two of us. See, there had been a popular spot for kids and couples alike to go and spend time together. It was beautiful, it really was. But see, there was no one left to use this place or see its beauty except for this one girl. My age, I was about 9, 10 years old, walking down the coast, carelessly, without a care in the world, honestly, swinging a stick in the air, trying to entertain whatever I could, trying to fight the urge to fall into this darkness that I felt creeping in day by day. So I was like any other kid, by themselves, fighting imaginary foes, talking to friends that were not there, riding horses that didn't exist. teaching myself classes without a classroom. That's when I saw a red piece of fabric flutter, flutter, flutter in the distance. A girl in a red dress sitting on one of the swings, watching the sun go down under the horizon and bathe the world in a beautiful array of hues of pinks and oranges that matched her dress. As she swung in the wind, the colors blended almost perfectly together with the trail of her dress. In my mind, it was magical. It was so beautiful. She had raven black hair, long, deep, beautiful locks that swung freely with the wind. She appeared slightly older than I, and she was. My mother told me never to talk to strangers, but I never saw her before. And curiosity and loneliness honestly got the best of me. So, in a town of one person, one child, another child was a friend, not a stranger. So I climbed the hill to the top to join her, watching the sun drop from the horizon. When I was close enough to say something, I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Gone was my voice with the wind. I felt afraid, scared. Dimitri, she suddenly said my name. She turned to me, her face pale as snow, her eyes emerald green. They were almost glowing. So beautiful, the color. Just as the waves were in the ocean. I heard so much about you, she said, smiling warmly. The fear I had felt an instant ago had subsided completely. I learned that she was a relative that lived in the neighboring village, but she never could visit because she was busy all day and could only visit in the evenings as the sun settled in the sky. Odd, I thought. I never knew we had relatives close by. I knew not to trust her. I knew it in my gut, but I still did. My naive, childish mind trusted this girl. I felt safe with her. I asked her what her name was. Angela, she said. Angela. And on that day I made a new and that we can meet right there on that hill when the sun crested the horizon, and she would be there. And from that day on, I was there every day I could be. We'd walk, played catch. Sometimes we'd play hide and seek. She was a master at both hiding and finding to an astonishing degree. But I paid it no mind. She was so quick on her feet, running like the wind when she ran or chased. I felt that she could find me or catch me without a problem, but she let me have a few victories. She told me about my family, our family, how once upon a time we were wealthy and lived in a big castle, but how it all changed before I was born. She told me how the world changes so quickly, that life became different, faster paced, and that I should cherish the quiet moments. She beckoned me to be at her side, yet at moments she'd let me wander free. The push and the pull, the yin and the yang, I suppose, the control and the freedom lured me in. She'd let me wander free, joining me in all of my explorations, as I felt as if I had met my long-lost sister. I had met my long-lost sister. She showed me places I never knew existed, hidden bunkers alongside the coast. She told me stories so vivid it was as if I was actually there with her. She reminded me so much of my mother. Her voice had that same alluring cadence. Whatever I asked, she had an answer for. Whatever I thought of, she did before me. Whatever I wished, she knew in advance. I could never explain it, like she knew me better than I knew myself. And when it came too dark and we said our farewells, my journey back always felt like I still Months went by, and Angela became the only thing I looked forward to at the end of the day. I hid it well from my parents, or at least I thought I did. They never told me anything. They never said I couldn't go. They just let me be. Remember, get home before it gets dark. Don't worry your mother, my father told me. I think he trusted me too much, in a way. Or maybe that's what I think now, looking back, just because I know the truth. Perhaps someone else. But that trust soon became mute and void. When one of the old villagers, the local butcher, was found dead, pale with anguish on his face, a bite mark on his body, the scene, I was told, was bloodless, too clean for a wild animal. Anything alive, that's for sure. The same man who'd accompanied me back home a few times was a man who was found dead. After that, I could barely leave my house. I tried and tried to convince my parents. My mother would scream at me, "What if that thing hurt you?" She'd say. But I knew better, that I would be safe with Angela, but I couldn't tell that secret to my parents. My father used to beat me when I acted up, but after that day he became, resigned. He'd usher me inside after I helped him do his work. He'd teach me to work the boat and the fishing gear during the noon time. We'd collect firewood. His rifle never left his side. And at night he would be outside sitting on a chair, rifle in his hands. The minuscule men remaining of the village patrolled during the evenings and at night. They ventured into the forest during the day only. They never found the culprit, the wolf, the demon, the darkness, or whatever it was. But you see, days turned into weeks, and eventually one day my dad managed to convince my mom to go out, to turn off the extra energy and run. I did that evening. I ran as fast as my feet would carry me, racing the sun as it set under the horizon. But I saw no red dress when I reached the foot of the hill. I walked at the swings, empty, but still swinging. From the breeze, I would have guessed. So I sat on the swing where she once sat, staring into the sea beyond, waiting. But she never arrived. A tear trickled down my cheek as I realized I'd lost my only friend. I looked down to the ground as I began to weep, but I saw something, a soft glow, a pebble. I went to pick it up, and right under it, buried shallow in the dirt, was a folded piece of paper. I picked it up, dusted it off, and unfolded it. My dear Dmitri, I can no longer accompany you for some time. You needn't worry, though. We will reasons I can't even explain. Hope is a very, very, very empty emotion and dangerous as well. My hope was rekindled, and I cried. I cried until I could not cry another tear. I lingered for a bit longer, cherishing the colors of the sunset, enjoying the light, gentle breeze caressing my skin, and hoping quietly that I'd see a red dress in the distance approaching. But I never did. When it became dark, I went home. It was a lonely trip back. I felt calm. The wind died down and the birds went silent. Everything was silent. So still. Yet in my soul I felt something brewing. I arrived home and was met by my mother in tears, shouting, crying, groping at me, hugging me. When she saw me, she leapt from her seat, pulled me into her arms, as if I had come back from war. I could not see my father anywhere. She said my uncle arrived from abroad and they met in private, but he would be back soon. When she calmed down, she sat me down and she told me a story. The last story I'd ever hear from her. Many, many years ago, somewhere in nest deep in the valleys of our old home lived our ancestors. One of them, a strong and wealthy man, built a strong fortress to defend from the Ottoman Turks. But with each year the Turks returned in greater numbers, and with each year there were less and less of us. And one winter, nearly 500 years ago, they returned. One winter, nearly 500 years ago, they returned, and that great fortress was burned to the ground. Many died. Save for a baby boy and his father, the man who built the fortress in the first place. He trudged through the blizzard and the cold, holding the reins with one and his baby boy in the other. He evaded Turkish patrols. He pushed his horse to his limits, and when the animal could no longer bear it, he pushed himself, leaving the horse behind. The Turks burned everything in their sight into ash, and the nights became colder and colder. The man was on the brink of starvation, but still pushed westward in hopes of finding shelter in the friendlier lands. 6 days, 6 nights he traveled, my mother told me, but he could not escape the mountains. He could not escape the Ottoman army. He walked with the boy in his arms, shoeless, torn clothing, frost bite, tearing his flesh, his limbs eating him alive. stomach exhaustion overtaking his body, he knew he could no longer continue. And he knew that if he died, so would his son. Then he found another victim, he thought. A hooded figure lying in the snow against a tree, wounded. He approached closer to it and removed the hood, revealing a beautiful woman. Black, long hair and green, emerald eyes. This was no ordinary woman, but a beast that prowled the lands, more dangerous than the cold and more dangerous than the entire Ottoman Empire. The beast on the brink of death, starved and purposeless, looked up at the man. They spoke. The words that were uttered that cold evening were forgotten to time. But one thing is certain. The man gave the beast a life, and it gave it purpose. The man sacrificed his soul to the beast. He made an oath of blood with it, and the beast gave the man a promise that his boy and all of his blood would be protected for as long as they draw breath. The oath, my mother called it. Just when the story ended, my father returned with his brother, my uncle. He told me to go to the other room while my mother and him spoke. I heard my mother begin weeping again. I learned later that my uncle managed to get hold of papers, but only for me to leave Romania once and for all, to have a better future. Those last days in my childhood home were a blur. They still are. They barely even feel real now. To leave Romania once and for all, to have a better future, I kept thinking in my mind. The packing, the last home-cooked meal. The remembrance of my mother and father hugging me tightly. My mother saying, "Take care of yourself." My father said, "Be strong." Looking outside the rear window of the car, I saw the very last image of them. My mother hugging my father, her face buried in his chest. I swear I saw a tear go down my father's cheek for the first time and the last. Years passed. I grew up. I learned a new language, made new friends, got a job, a good job in a factory. I settled in Germany. I was so busy I never could visit back home, but I'd receive letters and send them back. But the faces of my parents faded as well as their voices. It didn't happen overnight. Slowly with time, it erased them almost completely. And one day I turned 23. I finally got to visit, but not for a reunion. My mother had died, and I returned for her burial. Soon thereafter, my father joined her as well in the grave. I still had my uncle, but I felt and was left alone in a foreign land with a foreign language. My life became mundane: go to work, eat, sleep. I barely had time for anything. The shifts were long and arduous. I'd enter at sunrise and exit at sunset. I felt as if I was trapped. I traded one cage for another. More comfortable cage, maybe, but a cage nonetheless. I was lonely despite the new names I could call upon, and I never felt safe. Shortly after my parents died, I came back to work. One day after a long shift, I walked to the bus station. The weather was horrible. They said there would be a blizzard. The snow fell, the wind was slowly picking up. No cars on the street, no traffic jams, no horns honking in the air. Barely a noise echoed in a city of so many. I was completely alone. But sitting on that bench, I felt watched. Soon enough, I saw why. There was a group of men approaching the station. I did not recognize them. I couldn't. They were not workers, and their faces were obscured by hoods and scarves. They joked, and they seemed drunk. I ignored them. It was the first time I saw a group of drunks, and certainly not the last. It wasn't the first time I saw a group of drunks, and certainly not the last. They came to the station, talking, yelling. I was on my phone, trying to pay no attention. Then I heard one call to me. "Hey, do you have a sickie, man?" he asked. I nodded. I put my phone away and I got out a cigarette with one right hand. I went to give it to him with my left, but he grabbed my left arm, exposing a watch I wore. "Damn, mighty good watch you got there. Mind if we borrow?" I saw the glint of a blade from another man from the group. I tried to reason with them. It wasn't an expensive watch. It wasn't that I was rich. But before I could say another word, I saw a fist form that connected with my face. I was tossed into the snow, nose bleeding everywhere. They surrounded me like vultures. One rummaged through my pockets while the other kicked me in the ribs so hard I could not breathe. I begged as much as I could. The words were hollow and shallow, but this was pointless. I had hoped they beat me up, and that was it. I lied in the snow in a fetal position like a helpless fawn. But then they stopped abruptly. "Yo, who the fuck are you?" I heard one of them say. I heard the footsteps crunch. The cold, foreboding snow in the distance. I was about to open my eyes to look. As soon as I opened them, the snow flew into the air right into my lashes and into my sight, blinding me. I felt a rush of air hit my face. I heard a thump. One man fell, others yelled. and swore. Then another, with impossible speed. I heard and felt the man fall one by one, screaming. I felt them fall around me. I remained on the ground, holding my head, my bleeding head, pounding. The snow still blinding my sight. My body ached as I felt true fear for the first time in years. Not of the men, but of what was tearing them apart. I heard one shout, then another abrupt crunch. Another was cut mid-sentence by a gurgle, then abrupt silence. I lost track after that. But in mere seconds, only one remained. Hyperventilating, begging whoever did this to spare him. I could hear by his voice he was young, teenager at best. His tough facade vanished and was replaced by a child. His voice cracked. And then I heard another voice speak. In another language, one that I understood. It sounded almost disappointed. The teen was silent. Then I heard a crack of wind and the sound of dragging. Then silence. Absolute silence. I cried for the first time in years out of sheer anxiety, fear, stress, not pain. I shook from the cold and from fear no words can describe. Then I felt a presence above me, a cold touch on my cheek. Dimitri. I opened my eyes. I was sitting on the bench. I quickly checked my pockets. Everything was in its place. I could feel sore of the punches and the beating, but it was not bad. It was not anything I could not handle. Did I have a bad dream? Am I that tired to fall asleep in this cold? I looked around and the snow was undisturbed. No blood, no bodies. A dream, yes, but such a vivid dream in such a short period. I never experienced anything like it. I stared at my feet a few seconds. I stared at my feet for a few seconds, just wandering off in my own mind, thinking about my childhood, thinking about my life, where I'd been, my family, where I'd ended up, watching the cars go by, wondering if each of those individuals started off thinking that they too had normal lives when they were little. I guess I'll never know. You just don't, and you won't. trying to just warm myself up when I was flooded with these strange emotions, thoughts, ideas, feelings, curiosities. And I still felt watched. But then I heard the bus approach. Entering the bus, I sat down and I looked out the window, scanning, watching, waiting, trying to find anything amiss, a glimpse, anything. In the back of my mind, I knew I'll find something, but I knew it was all just a childish fantasy. I hoped that it was. And then again, maybe I didn't. I don't really know. Then I felt something warm under my nose, and I touched it. It is blood. I had some tissues, thankfully. Arriving back home, I undressed and sat down next to the window. I got out my fresh pack of cigarettes to see it was already open. Did I smoke one already? And lit up another and cracked open the window so the smoke would trickle out. I just stared. I kept staring as the cars passed by with that gnawing question that I'd always had. And that's when I saw her. I saw a person stand across the street in a dark coat, a hood over their head, and a red scarf covering their face. But I could see the streaks of black raven hair. I focused, then I realized green lights stared back. My eyes widened as soon as I blinked. A car passed by and she was gone. And I sat there alone. But you know what? This time I was not quite lonely, because I knew a good friend, a true friend, always keeps a promise. I hope you have all enjoyed these 3 amazing stories. Please send these authors some love if they are mentioned on here. If not, they've been deleted. But you'll find them on our No Sleep, on Scary Stories, and Just Ask Reddit. Thank you for joining me, and please, if you enjoyed this creepy content, I'm really working to get consistent content as fast as I can out there. I absolutely as consistent as anybody out there, but since it's not, I have to work. But I love you all, I do. Please do not think any different, and I'm going to try to get back on a live schedule. I did not realize having laryngitis could last for months. Now I'm just kidding, it was like 2 or 3 weeks, but then everything else happened. And I just bought a new car so my daughter could have a car. And I used one when she turned 16, so I got a really good deal on a new truck. Now I can carry all my stuff around. I can go camping. I can go snowboarding. I can go skating, skiing, fishing, whatever I want now, and not have to worry about it. Golfing, scratching up or getting the inside of my car dirty, especially work, because construction is not a clean living, for sure. But I try to keep it as clean as possible. I love you all. I will not ramble on too much longer. I just wanted to tell you that. Thank you for listening. Thank you. And I love you all so very much. I do, and I think about you all the time. Please subscribe and like. It will help the channel grow. And the more the channel grows, the more I can be consistent.